Exclusive. Chinese scientists are creating CRISPR babies. CRISPR. Capital C, capital R, capital I, capital S, capital P, capital R. CRISPR. That headline that I quoted from the MIT Technology Review from 2018 is not talking about CRISPR babies in terms of the crispiness of our lettuce. No, it's talking about CRISPR in terms of the acronym that comes from genetic engineering and biology. And it's referring to babies that are perhaps being born with edited genomes or edited DNA via CRISPR technology. Okay, if everything I just said was a bunch of mumbo-jumbo, let's take a minute to break that down. As you may have guessed, because everything is capitalized in CRISPR, CRISPR is an acronym, a biology acronym, but it's become kind of an engineering acronym too, because biomedical engineers and chemical engineers use this molecular tool, biological tool, to edit and engineer DNA sequences and maybe engineer biological organisms in the future. Who knows? The acronym CRISPR stands for Clustered, Regularly Interspaced Short Palindromic Repeats. I love all of those words for their vocabulary, but put it all together, and what it means is CRISPR describes a family of repeated DNA sequences, repeated patterns in the DNA of bacteria and in another type of organism that looks a lot like bacteria, but it's not bacteria. It's called archaea. So CRISPR is this family of short, repeated DNA sequences in bacteria, and it's kind of like a big part of the so-called immune system of bacteria. So just like people like us, we have immune systems that protect our bodies from invaders. Well, bacteria, they've got their own response to protect themselves from invaders, invading viruses, in fact. CRISPR is part of that system. Viruses might have invasive DNA, and they try to inject that DNA in bacteria, which the bacteria doesn't like. That's gross, right? The bacteria is like, get that out of here. As part of its defense mechanism, it might actually take some of that invasive DNA and store bits of it inside its own DNA. Kind of like storing a snapshot of this invasive virus so that it remembers what it looks like. Not only that, this CRISPR DNA also helps the bacteria generate proteins that recognize those invasive viruses again, and it helps them cut the DNA of those viruses too. So basically, these CRISPR regions of bacterial DNA and archaea DNA remember invaders, and when the invaders come by again, CRISPR helps create proteins that cut up that invader. Isn't that weird? So when you go to the store and they put up pictures of people who've shoplifted and they say, don't let this person back in the store, that's kind of like CRISPR, except CRISPR is actually going to go out and cut that guy if he comes back again. So CRISPR helps the bacteria cut up the viruses that are invading. Well, we can create those short patterns of CRISPR DNA too and attach it to our own proteins so that we can cut the DNA of bacteria exactly where we want to cut it. Which is amazing because then biologists, biomedical engineers, chemical engineers can cut up, edit, and maybe engineer biological things precisely how we want to. Isn't that strange and powerful and neat and terrifying? CRISPR is our engineering word of the day. This is Pius saying hi. I am your host of the Engineering Word of the Day, but I also host the K-12 Engineering Education Podcast, all about bringing engineering education to people of all ages, including the young ones. Go on over to the website, k12engineering.net, and subscribe today. Thanks.